The last thing I remembered was dozing off in the psychology research room, my mind still pondering my thesis on female self-awareness and psychological guidance. My professor had praised my choice of topic, saying I'd captured the essence of modern women's struggles and potential solutions. Then everything changed with a single nap. Master Alex. Master Alex. The old master, he's gone. I was jolted awake by a young boy's crying. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in an unfamiliar room. Instead of the fluorescent-lit university library, I was in a dimly lit chamber decorated with astrological charts and mysterious symbols. The air was thick with the scent of incense. Master Alex, why haven't you said anything since morning? The old master's last wish was for you to continue his work as the town's fortune teller. The boy sobbed. I jumped to my feet, only to make a terrifying discovery: my body had completely changed. My feminine form was gone, replaced by a lean male figure dressed in a dark Victorian waistcoat. My hands were longer, stronger, and when I rushed to the mirror, I saw a young man's face staring back at me, probably in his early 20s. What in the world? I muttered, my voice now deep and masculine. Are you all right, master? The boy, who I learned was called Tommy, looked at me with concern. I'm fine, I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. As a psychology student, I knew the most important thing now was to gather information and assess the situation. Through talking with Tommy, I learned that I was now in Victorian London, circa 1850. My new identity was Alexander Alex Reed, a young fortune teller who had just lost his mentor. Tommy was an orphan the old master had taken in. Master Alex, there are already people waiting outside for readings, Tommy whispered. What? Now? I nearly jumped. People want their fortunes told now? Of course. The old master was quite famous in London. People have been queuing since dawn. Even after hearing about his passing, they say they'll wait for you to take up his mantle. My head was spinning. Fortune telling? I barely knew how to read a horoscope, let alone divine the future. What was I going to do? Tommy had already ushered in the first client, a worried-looking middle-aged woman in a black dress. She got straight to the point. Young Mr. Reed, I'm here about my daughter's future. I forced myself to remain composed, taking a sip of tea while my eyes fell on the old master's copy of the complete book of divination. Suddenly, I had an idea. Let me see, I said with feigned confidence, while secretly observing the woman's body language. As a psychology student, reading micro-expressions and body language was my specialty. The woman showed clear signs of anxiety when mentioning her daughter, her brow furrowing and hands fidgeting with her handkerchief, all classic signs of worry. Your daughter's situation, it's troubling you greatly? I ventured. Remarkable, she gasped. You're just like your master. Yes, my daughter's engagement, the gentleman's family suddenly withdrew their offer. I internally breathed a sigh of relief. This was basically relationship counseling, wasn't it? Different era, same human nature. Please stay calm, I adopted a professional tone. Has your daughter been staying in her room lately, refusing meals? Indeed. She barely leaves her room, and I worry myself sick over her condition. I continued probing. Does your daughter have any particular interests or talents? Music, painting, or literature perhaps? Why yes, she loves literature. She often copies poetry in her spare time. I had already formulated a plan. Madam, I have consulted the stars about your daughter's fate. I see that she has a blessed destiny, though she faces temporary difficulties. In my opinion, it would be beneficial for her to immerse herself in poetry for the time being. A pleasant surprise may await. This wasn't mere fortune-telling. From a psychological perspective, encouraging someone recovering from heartbreak to engage in their favorite activities was a proven therapeutic approach. The woman nodded eagerly. I'll certainly suggest this to her. Thank you, Mr. Reed. After seeing off my first client, I let out a long breath. I had somehow managed to get through it. But I knew this was just the beginning. Master Alex, you were amazing. Tommy exclaimed admiringly. Just like the old master. I shook my head with a wry smile. I wasn't using any mystical powers, just applying modern psychological counseling techniques. But then a thought struck me, perhaps this wasn't such a bad approach after all? In Victorian London, women were often confined by strict social norms, with little opportunity for emotional support or guidance. What if I could use fortune-telling as a cover for providing psychological counseling? With this realization, I began to see my unexpected time travel in a new light. Since I had been transported to this era, why not use my knowledge of modern psychology to help these Victorian women? Tommy, I smiled, please show in the next client. The afternoon sunlight streamed through the window, illuminating the astrological charts on my table. At that moment, I felt I had found my purpose in this unfamiliar time. Mr. Reed, I've heard you have a special gift for understanding people. One morning, a young lady in an elegant dress entered my consultation room. She was accompanied by an older maid, clearly from an aristocratic family. What surprised me was that she had come to seek fortune-telling alone. "I am Miss Catherine Spencer, and I've heard of your remarkable insights," she said softly, her eyes downcast. I carefully observed her state, hesitant to speak, constantly fidgeting with her handkerchief, traces of dried tears at the corners of her eyes. These were typical signs of depression. I had seen many similar cases during my psychology internship. "Tommy, please bring Miss Spencer some tea," I said, trying to help her feel at ease. "What brings you here today?" She glanced up briefly before looking down again. I wish to know about my marriage prospects." "Of course." In Victorian society, marriage was often the greatest concern for young women. "Could you share your birth date with me?" I pretended to calculate something while actually studying her reactions. Every time I mentioned marriage, she would tremble slightly. "Miss," the maid suddenly spoke up, "perhaps we should leave. If your father finds out." Catherine's head shot up, tears welling in her eyes. "Please, Martha, don't tell father." I don't know what else to do." I immediately understood. This was a case of family intervention. Even in modern times, countless young women faced arranged marriages, let alone in the Victorian era. "Miss Spencer, have you heard the saying that while the stars hold secrets, they speak through earthly means?" I said suddenly. She looked at me, puzzled. I took out a sheet of paper and a pen. "Perhaps you could write down your thoughts?" The stars often reveal themselves through one's own words. This was a technique I had learned from modern counseling. Letting clients write down their feelings both helps them process emotions and helps the counselor understand the situation better. Catherine hesitated before taking the pen. Her handwriting was elegant, befitting a well-educated lady. She wrote, "While I know I should obey my parents' wishes in matters of marriage, how can I marry a stranger when my heart belongs to another?" Hesitantly, Catherine took the pen and began to write. Her elegant handwriting revealed her upper-class upbringing. She poured out her story on paper. "While I understand marriage should be arranged by parents, I'm being forced to marry a complete stranger when Thomas and I have known each other since childhood." Reading between her carefully penned lines, I could sense her deep pain and helplessness. A classic case of childhood sweethearts being separated by social conventions. "Miss Spencer," I carefully began, "do you know what your facial features reveal?" She shook her head. "Your brow shows nobility, and your features speak of good fortune. But most interestingly, there's a particular marking near your eye, a sign that you're destined to face a trial of the heart." "A trial?" she asked anxiously. "Indeed," I continued, "but this trial isn't a misfortune. Rather, it's an opportunity given to you by the stars." I noticed she was listening intently, so I pressed on, "This trial will help you understand what your heart truly desires. Miss Spencer, have you ever considered why you feel such distress?" "Because..." She bit her lip, "because I don't want to marry someone I've never met." "And what do you want?" She seemed startled by the question, as if she'd never been asked before. "I want to be with someone I love." The words seemed to shock her as she spoke them. In Victorian society, for a young lady to speak of a love was almost scandalous. "Miss Spencer," I said gently, "do you know what's most remarkable about your features? It's your eyes. They hold a light that suggests you're destined for an uncommon path." She stared at me, transfixed. "The truth of destiny often lies within our own hearts," I continued softly. "How can one find happiness if they dare not acknowledge their own feelings?" Tears suddenly rolled down Catherine's cheeks. Years of suppressed emotions had finally found an outlet. "But..." she sobbed, "even if I understand my own heart, what can I do? In this society, the planets move in their orbits, the seasons change," I said mysteriously. "Do you think destiny is unchangeable?" Seeing her thoughtful expression, I continued, "You came to see me today, perhaps that too is destiny?" She paused, considering this. "Take this," I handed her a small velvet pouch. "It's a charm for clarity of mind. When you feel lost, hold it and remember our conversation today." In reality, it was just a sachet with dried lavender, a simple application of anchoring therapy from modern psychology, giving clients a physical object to ground themselves during moments of anxiety. "Remember," I concluded, "your destiny belongs to you. Even if you cannot change your circumstances immediately, never lose hope." When Catherine left, her shoulders seemed lighter. I knew this was just the beginning, she would need more guidance and support to find her true path. Master Alex, Tommy approached, your advice today seemed different from the old masters. I smiled, patting his head. Because fortune-telling isn't just about predicting the future, Tommy. It's about helping people understand their own hearts. That evening, Martha, Catherine's maid, returned with a heavy purse. She said her mistress's spirits had lifted considerably and she wished to return for more consultations. As I watched the sunset through my window, I felt a sense of accomplishment. In this era of limited women's rights, perhaps I could use this method to help them find themselves and bring some light into their lives. On my desk lay Catherine's letter. I carefully stored it away. She was the first person I'd helped in this time period, marking the beginning of my new mission. I heard footsteps outside, another visitor approaching. I straightened my waistcoat, ready to help another soul in need. After all, this was just the beginning. Mr. Reed, I hear you're not just skilled at fortune-telling, but also particularly adept at offering guidance? I looked up to see an elegantly dressed matron leading 3 young ladies into my consultation room. My reputation had indeed grown in London these past weeks, with a steady stream of female visitors seeking my counsel. You're too kind, madam, I said modestly, while inwardly wondering, was this to be a group session? These are my 2 daughters and my niece, the matron, Lady Worthington, explained. They've all reached marriageable age, and we'd like to consult you about their prospects. I carefully observed the 3 young ladies. The one on the left had delicate features but kept her eyes downcast, the middle one carried herself with dignity but had a hint of rebellion in her eyes, the right one appeared lively despite trying to maintain a proper demeanor. Please, be seated, I gestured as Tommy served tea. Who would like to go first? I will, chirped the girl on the right, earning a stern look from Lady Worthington. I mean, if you please, sir. This spirited young lady introduced herself as Lucy Fairfax, Lady Worthington's niece. She spoke directly, Mr. Reed, I want to know if it's possible for me to remain unmarried? Lucy. Lady Worthington scolded. How improper. But I was intrigued. In an era where marriage was considered a woman's only destiny, here was someone brave enough to question it. Miss Fairfax, what prompts this question? I want to go into trade. Her eyes sparkled. My father's a merchant, and I've learned so much from him. But he says business is no place for a lady. Now they're arranging a marriage for me. I recognized her frustration. Here was a Victorian woman with entrepreneurial ambitions, born in the wrong era. I see in your features the marks of a natural businesswoman, I said seriously. Your brow shows acumen, and your palm lines indicate a talent for commerce. Really? She brightened. But. However, I added carefully, the stars suggest you must take an indirect path to achieve your goals. She caught my meaning and winked conspiratorially. Next came Lady Worthington's eldest daughter, Emily. She'd been quiet throughout, but I noticed ink stains on her fingers, a sign of a scholarly nature. Sure enough, under my gentle questioning, she confessed, I wish I could study at university like my brother. Emily. Lady Worthington was scandalized. Where did you get such improper notions? I quickly intervened, my lady, your daughter's features indicate a natural affinity for learning. Perhaps allowing her to study at home would better prepare her for guiding her future children's education. This reasoning, framing education in terms of maternal duties, seemed to placate Lady Worthington somewhat. Finally came Elizabeth, the younger daughter. Her situation alarmed me most, she was engaged to a man known for his violent temper, and she sought to break the engagement. But father says breaking the engagement would ruin our family's reputation. She whispered tearfully. I spoke gravely, Miss Elizabeth, your features show a warning sign of potential danger. If not avoided, the consequences could be severe. Lady Worthington paled, Mr. Reed, what should we do? I would suggest breaking the engagement now, citing astrological incompatibility. Better that than a ruined reputation later. After they left, I exhaled deeply. I'd essentially conducted 3 counseling sessions under the guise of fortune-telling. Knowing one session wasn't enough, I told the young ladies, you're welcome to return, ostensibly to obtain protective charms. Thus, my consultation room gradually became a secret gathering place for women. Under the pretense of seeking fortune-telling, they found a space to discover themselves and support each other. Lucy cleverly started a small shop under her future husband's name, proving quite successful. Emily began hosting literary circles for young ladies at home. Elizabeth successfully avoided her dangerous engagement with my help. Mr. Reed, Lucy said one day, smiling, you're not really telling fortunes, are you? You're showing us the way. My heart skipped a beat, but she continued, it's wonderful though. At least now we know that women can have choices too. Watching these awakening women, I felt gratified. They were like buds beginning to bloom, needing only a little sunlight to reveal their beauty. Soon, my reputation spread throughout London. Ladies whispered among themselves, "For true guidance, visit Mr. Reed. He doesn't just tell fortunes, he helps you understand yourself." "Master Alex," Tommy asked one day, "why are all your visitors ladies?" I smiled without answering. Because I understood women's hearts, and because I wanted to help them find their spiritual freedom. What I didn't know was that my activities had caught certain people's attention. A storm was brewing on the horizon. Charlatan. The morning peace was shattered by a harsh shout. Just as I was about to open my consultation room, a group of policemen stormed in. "Officer, this is the one Reed, the fortune teller who's been corrupting proper young ladies and undermining social order," came a sneering voice. I recognized him as the steward from Lord Ashworth's household, one of London's most conservative peers. What is the meaning of this? I maintained my composure. The lead officer pulled out a warrant. "You're accused of using fraudulent practices to mislead young ladies and encourage improper behavior. Arrest him." "Stop," a clear, authoritative voice rang out. The crowd parted as an elegantly dressed lady stepped forward. The officers immediately bowed. "Your Grace, the Duchess of Marlborough." My heart skipped a beat. The Duchess of Marlborough, one of the most influential women at court? What was she doing here? "I wish to see this Mr. Reed who has all of London's ladies so intrigued," the Duchess approached, studying me carefully. I responded with dignified restraint. "Your Grace honors me with your presence." The Duchess smiled enigmatically. "Do you know, Mr. Reed, that even the ladies at court speak of you? They say you not only tell fortunes but understand women's hearts remarkably well." My throat tightened. Had my activities drawn attention from the highest circles? "Your Grace," Lord Ashworth's steward interjected, "this man convinced our young lady to break her engagement, bringing shame to our house." "Silence," the Duchess cut him off sharply. "I know all about that proposed marriage. The gentleman's sister serves in my household and has suffered his brutality. Mr. Reed saved your young lady from a terrible fate, and instead of gratitude, you bring accusations?" The steward trembled and bowed repeatedly in fear. The Duchess turned to me, her eyes glinting with intelligence. "Mr. Reed, I've come to request a private consultation at Marlborough House." She was offering me protection? I felt relieved yet apprehensive. Marlborough House? Walking into the lion's den, surely? But I had no choice. Soon, I was escorted to her grand residence. The entire way, my palms were sweating. After all this time in the past, my greatest fear was exposure in these high social circles. "Leave us," the Duchess dismissed all her servants and fixed me with a penetrating stare. "Now then, who are you really?" My heart jumped. "Your Grace, I don't understand." "Don't pretend," she smiled. "Did you think I wouldn't notice? Though you wear men's clothes, your every gesture betrays feminine sensibilities." I froze. Was my secret about to be exposed? "Don't be afraid," the Duchess said kindly. "I won't harm you. In fact..." She lowered her voice. "I too am from the future." "What?" I nearly jumped from my chair. 10 years ago, I found myself here, just like you," she sighed. "That's why I recognized something different about you. Your counseling methods are clearly based on modern psychology." Now I noticed that the Duchess's speech patterns did have a modern edge. "What year are you from?" she asked. 2024. "I see. I came from 2014, she mused. "Perhaps this is fate. For 10 years, I've wanted to help women of this era, but my position at court limited what I could do. Now that you're here. Your Grace means. Shall we work together?" Her eyes sparkled. "Continue your fortune telling for common women. I'll handle matters at court. I'll ensure your safety, and in return, you can help me counsel some of the ladies at court." I felt excited. "You want to change women's destinies in this era too?" "Yes," she sighed. "Since we're here, we might as well make a difference, shouldn't we?" And so, I gained a powerful ally. From that day forward, I not only had the Duchess's protection but also a larger stage for my work. "By the way," the Duchess said as I was leaving, "from now on, you're my official fortune teller. No one will dare trouble you now." I bowed deeply to her. At that moment, I saw a greater hope for our mission. Leaving Marlborough House, the setting sun painted the sky. I touched my face, thinking how beneath this male disguise beat a heart determined to change the world. And now, that heart had found a kindred spirit. 1 month later, at Marlborough House. "Mr. Reed, I hear your methods of divination are quite unique." I wish to experience them myself, said the sophisticated Queen Victoria, her gaze scrutinizing me. Through the Duchess of Marlborough's arrangements, I had become a regular visitor in high society. Today was my first audience with the Queen, and I couldn't help feeling nervous. As your Majesty wishes, I replied respectfully. The ladies at court speak highly of you, saying you do more than tell fortunes, you guide them. I hear you've even started reading circles for women? My heart skipped. Word of this had reached the Queen? Your Majesty, I chose my words carefully, as the poet says, education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire. When women can read and write, they not only better educate their children but also better understand the principles of moral conduct. You make a valid point, the Queen considered thoughtfully. I've long felt that the ladies at court, with too much idle time, often fall into petty disputes. Perhaps? She changed tack, read my fortune, Mr. Reed. I understood she was testing me. Your Majesty's features speak of the highest nobility, yet there's a shade of concern in your brow, I observed carefully. Might it be about the welfare of your ladies? The Queen looked surprised. You truly can read faces? Your Majesty's concern for your ladies' well-being shows in your countenance, such royal compassion cannot be hidden. The Queen's eyes showed approval. Tell me your thoughts on this matter. If I may be so bold, I said cautiously, perhaps if the ladies at court were given the opportunity to study literature and sciences, it would both improve their character and prepare them to nurture the next generation? But... The Queen hesitated, a ladies' academy? It's rather unprecedented. At that moment, the Duchess of Marlborough entered perfectly on cue. Your Majesty, didn't Queen Elizabeth herself promote women's education? Through our combined persuasion, the Queen eventually agreed. Soon after, a ladies' academy was established at court. I was appointed as one of the instructors, officially teaching traditional subjects. Of course, I wasn't just teaching traditional values. Under the guise of classical education, I quietly introduced modern concepts. Today we'll examine this quote about women's virtues, I would tell my attentive students. The true virtue of a lady lies in her independent spirit. I reinterpreted obedience to husband as having one's own principles, and feminine modesty as dignity and self-respect. Gradually, these ideas spread through court circles. Many ladies developed a genuine love for learning, focusing less on social rivalries. One day, a young lady-in-waiting timidly asked me, Mr. Reed, you say women can achieve great things, but confined to court, what can we really do? I smiled and replied, have you heard of Queen Elizabeth I? She began as a mere princess. Mr. Reed, another student excitedly shared, I've been teaching my brother to read. He says I explain things better than his tutor. Watching them gradually discover their potential brought me joy. These small changes were like spring rain nurturing dry soil. Meanwhile, my work beyond court flourished. With the Duchess's support, I began sponsoring education for girls from poor families, saving many from being sent into service. Master Alex, Tommy asked one day, you say we're telling fortunes, but aren't we really helping people? I patted his head, because true fortune-telling isn't about predicting fate, Tommy. It's about helping people take control of their own destiny. Looking at the moonlight outside, I thought about the modern world. Though I didn't know when I might return, I was no longer in a hurry. I had found my purpose here. Using modern psychological wisdom to illuminate the minds of Victorian women, using fortune-telling as a cover to spread seeds of awakening. Perhaps this was why I had been sent to this era. Mr. Reed, the Duchess said to me one day, you're doing something remarkable. Perhaps centuries from now, no one will remember our names, but the seeds we're planting will surely bloom. I nodded with a smile. In a way, we were all sowers in the stream of history. And for the women of this era, dawn was finally beginning to break. The end.